The protein slop epidemic. Butthole Hastings. All of these things, all of these protein powders, all of these other stuff. There's like weird recipes, all that stuff. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. It's just to make money. At the end of the day, it's just to make money. And like when we have reached the point where people put chicken into a blender, I think it's over. I think it's over.
If you're craving a Reese's but trying to lose fat, then you have to try my giant protein Reese's with 52 grams of protein.
Easy and delicious, high protein chocolate chip cookie dough.
This is the easiest high protein, low calorie, high volume snack idea.
What is this? This looks hella... What the fuck? That looks gross. And that 235 calories and 51 gram protein. 15 calories, 3 grams protein per cube. High protein, low calorie marshmallows. What the fuck is that? That's no marshmallow. What the fuck is that?
Protein, low calorie marshmallows.
Chances are you've come across one of these recipes online within the past.
Yes, I have. These are all on TikTok. I you know, watch TikTok. I use TikTok. So, well, I've seen these. I've seen these. And they're not really healthy either.
Year, and maybe you even decided to try one of them only to find out that it tastes like absolute doo-doo. But did you even really need to suffer through?
They do taste ass. Some of these do probably very much taste ass. Like really ass. See? A smart man, a smart German bodybuilder once said, doesn't need to taste good, it just needs to work. Like, the bro just grab low-fat quark. Just low-fat quark, right? It has like 60, like, was it 60 grams of protein, right? It has that just in there. 500 grams, 60 grams of protein. And that fucker just ate it. Without anything in addition to that. That fucker just ate it. He did not care. We don't even have TikTok. I watch the shit on YouTube. Well, you're just short brain rotted. It doesn't make any difference. Obviously not marshmallow. It's a block of cheese. It looks like a block of cheese. I made one of these low calorie, high protein recipes and it was horrible. I nearly threw up. Like I said, it doesn't need to taste good. It just needs to work.
Through the bad taste to get the extra protein anyway, or have food and fitness companies programmed us to think that every single meal needs to prioritize protein over everything else? Well, yeah, they kind of have, and in this video, you'll learn about the more sinister and often gut-destroying consequences of our obsession with protein from the perspective of someone who...
Why? Don't you want to have, like, the most explosive diarrhea that makes you feel like Oppenheimer? I've become death, destroyer of my ass.
Eats quite a lot of it. We've been placing a heavy emphasis on protein, especially in the United States, ever since bodybuilding became more mainstream. Before then, athletes knew protein mattered, but it wasn't treated like a magic bullet. That started to shift in the mid to late 1960s when bodybuilding entered what is referred to as its golden era. Bodybuilders like Steve Reeves and later Arnold Schwarzenegger started crediting their muscle growth to high-protein diets and protein powders.
I always had to take protein drinks in between meals because I could never eat enough to get my 250 grams of protein.
We just ate, 4 or 5 times a day, more beef than the guys are eating today.
Around the same time, early sports nutrition research was coming out showing that nitrogen balance studies could link higher protein intake to greater muscle repair and growth. When scientists studied bodybuilders or endurance athletes, they found those groups pushed their protein needs substantially higher. One study from 1988 compared bodybuilders, endurance athletes, and sedentary people, and found that bodybuilders needed around 1.
To be fair, lots and lots of these now like bodybuilders nowadays are literally they're on gear. Like protein, you will never reach the size of these people. It's just impossible because most of them are on gear. Like most of the ones that are glorified are on gear. The Trent twins are on gear. I mean, it's literally in the name. Togi's on gear. Liver King's on gear. Pretty sure most of all the actors are probably on gear. Everyone's on gear. So we'll never reach that mass anyways. Bodybuilders are so unattractive, I'm sorry. There is certainly a degree where it does look heinous. Especially when, like, you're, like, really low fat. When your body fat is, like, really low for, like, competitions. Like, that looks heinous. Guys, my younger brother's listening to brain rot rap on loop. And he, with a speaker, only he has the controls. 3 rooms, and now I'm moving to Afghanistan. Goodbye. You are weird.
0.12 times the protein of controls. Endurance athletes needed even more, about 1.67 times the amount of sedentary controls in that experiment. But these studies weren't really mainstream around this time. If you ask anybody who was seriously into bodybuilding during this era, most of them will tell you that more protein equals better gains, and you should eat as much protein as you possibly can. Regardless, from these studies, institutional guidelines like WHO reports suggested minimum protein requirements for non-athletes, which were around 0.6 to 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight per day, or 0.36 grams per pound of body weight. Some more recent studies suggest that even with minimal activity, you should be getting at least 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight. Now, I want you to remember this number as a reference point for the rest of this video, because it'll show you just how ridiculous and unnecessary some of these high protein alternatives are. For the next couple decades, bodybuilding slowly rose in popularity, and with the advent of social
Remember, that man can't even walk anymore, though I think that's due to all the surgeries that he had on his legs that fucked it up. So that's not even due to bodybuilding. At least not all of it.
Media, it was about to get taken to the next level. I already talked about this quite a bit in my male body image crisis video, but when social media and smartphones took over, our cultural values started to change. And this is an important aspect to consider when talking about our protein obsession. The economy was, and is, largely based around who could get the most eyeballs on them at any given time. Therefore, in general, the more muscular you were, the more likely you were to get high engagement, and the more likely people were going to listen to you. Now, what was being shoved down everyone's throat as the first...
The problem is that either they're on gear. That's that one of the problems is it's not realistic because they're on gear, or it's photoshopped. Same, by the way, for the women. Most of that stuff is photoshopped. They do not look like that.
Piece of advice in order to build muscle?
Optimize your 24-hour protein synthesis levels.
Beef is legitimately one of the best and most anabolic foods you can give your body.
Now, with that being said, we now know that protein is actually pretty damn important for building muscle, as the studies show. And this influence from these fitness influencers has undoubtedly had a net positive on young people who are starting to get into resistance and endurance training more. But then, in the past couple years, something started to shift. Suddenly, protein was no longer a primary focus for athletes. Apparently, everybody was not consuming as much protein as they should.
What would be the amount of protein that you would have everybody eat? In terms of a number of grams per pound or kilogram of body weight?
That's actually an easy question. 1 gram per pound ideal body weight. There's no
way most people would be able to pull that off. And once you're vegan or vegetarian, there's no way you're gonna pull that off. Hi Jacob, how you doing? I'm doing good. Hello. There's no way that you're gonna pull that off consistently if you're not like using the monies to do this. Otherwise, you there's no way.
Evidence that a higher protein diet is detrimental to kidney health, to bone health. And we use these terms loosely, like a high protein diet, when we have to recognize that 0.8 grams per kg is a low protein diet.
These clips instilled the idea into the average person that protein was the end-all be-all for optimal human health, extending beyond the bodybuilding realm. In other words, everything you ate needed to be centered around something high in protein, or what you were eating could not be considered that healthy. I can't give you the exact date this trend started to blow up, but I noticed it within the past 3 years or so. And this is when big companies started to take notice and take advantage of it.
With 12 grams of protein in every serving, Quaker Protein Instant Oatmeal is there for active mornings.
What is this? Protein? This is protein?
What? I can't believe this is protein.
Why Cloverleaf protein snacks?
I wanted a nutritious protein.
Yeah, it's just to make money again. It's just to make money. I did 65% of that protein. I am so cooked. if that's genuinely what you need, yeah, you're fucked. Straight up. You're just fucked. There's no denial you're not fucked.
Snack to help keep me going.
Great choice, Beth.
We can start by looking at the products that actually deliver on the promises they propose, at least in the protein department. For instance, a simple Quest bar. Its very first ingredient is a protein blend of milk protein isolate and whey protein isolate, and it has around 180 calories and 21 grams of protein per bar. That's a great ratio of calories to protein, and it deserves to be given the high protein label.
In addition to that, not all protein is built the same. Some protein you cannot use. Your body cannot use if you don't eat something along the way. Like some things you have to, for example, eat potatoes to be able to utilize them. Because something in potatoes makes it so that you can, like, consume it. Like, use it. Your body can use it. That's the word. So even then, not all protein is built the same.
Now let's take a look at this product, Be Kind Breakfast Protein. The word protein is literally in the title of the product, but if you look at the nutrition facts, you're only getting 8 grams of protein per 220 calorie serving. That's only 4 more grams of protein than a Snickers bar at roughly the same amount of calories. The question is how? How can these companies get away with slapping the protein label on everything? Well,
manipulation. That's what it is. And you know what's the worst bit? I can't unfuck myself. There is a way you won't like that way.
It all has to do with FDA regulations, and the first I'd actually heard about this was in Josh Brett's video on this subject, which was really well done, by the way. You see, there actually are rules in the US for what counts as a, quote, good source of protein and a, quote, high source of protein. It's just that these companies work around these rules or exploit them in a way to personally benefit them. Under FDA guidelines, if a product wants to call itself a, quote, good source of protein, it needs to provide somewhere between 10 and 19% of the daily value of protein in a standard serving size. To call itself high or an excellent source of protein, it needs at least 20% of the daily value. The daily value for protein, by the way, is set at 50 grams per day. That means that depending on the serving size, we're often talking about products with as little as 5 to 10 grams of protein being legally able to brand themselves.
Interesting. Very interesting. Do you mean just poker? Yes, that was the word. That was the word.
As, quote, high protein. And that's where companies start to get sneaky. First, they can shrink or stretch serving sizes just enough to hit that percentage threshold. Then, instead of using high protein, they might use softer phrases like contains protein or source of protein, which only require that 10 to 19% range. They can also emphasize raw protein grams without even really addressing whether the protein is high quality or digestible. The FDA does technically require protein digestibility to be accounted for using something called the PDCAAS score, but most consumers don't know what that is, and companies know that just throwing 20 grams of protein on the label looks better than explaining how usable that protein actually is. Side note, by the way, you don't really need to worry about protein digestibility as long as you're eating a wide range of whole foods, but we'll go over that a little bit later in the video. Then there's the implied claims, things like packed with protein or using jacked up gym imagery on the packaging. These purposely blur the line between legal definitions and marketing fluff, because while explicit nutrient claims are regulated, the imagery and wording can be changed enough to the point where consumers don't realize they're eating an overhyped product. A great example.
Yep, manipulation. Like I said, it's all manipulation. It all is. Like, it really all is. Huh. It kinda has gotten out of hand. But again, they need to get that back somehow.
Example of someone who exposes this type of marketing is Matt Rosenman, who frequently rebrands unhealthy junk foods in a way that makes them sound like a health product.
Thanks to a little rebranding, Twix is now healthy and ideal for pre or post workout.
These are the same type of methods some of the biggest companies are using, and that's not even to mention some of the other stuff that's packed into these so-called healthier, high-protein alternatives. A 2024 study in Nutrients looked at over 4,300 processed foods in Spain, around 13% of which...
I went the simple route. I needed my protein. I just straight up grabbed 3 low-fat quark and I just said, yep, that goes inside whether I will almost vomit or not. And I forced myself through it. And it worked. And boy, did it work. Was I happy about it? Nope. Did it taste good? Nope. Would I have almost vomited every time I did it? Yes. Do I regret it? Yes.
Had explicit protein claims, and they found that 90% of the foods with protein claims were categorized as less healthy than those who didn't make explicit claims. Now, some of those less healthy categories they outlined, we could argue about. High fat doesn't necessarily mean that something's less healthy, and if something is high in sodium, well, that's actually kind of good for athletes because when you work out, you sweat a lot and you lose a lot of electrolytes, and it's good to get in a lot of sodium after a workout. But one of the biggest culprits that absolutely deserves to be scrutinized
Drink a glass of salt water, problem solved.
are the artificial sweeteners. Sugar alcohols, also known as polyols, have been shown to cause pretty bad gastrointestinal issues like gas, bloating, and diarrhea. And the effects are especially severe for those struggling with IBS. But companies will replace their usual sugar product with this alternative to market it as low sugar and low calorie, when in reality, it might have actually just been healthier to use real sugar. Imagine someone who eats like several of these protein products per day, these protein bars just loaded with sugar alcohols. You might know somebody, you might be that somebody. They're just like asking for digestive issues later on in life. Another hilarious fact about processed high protein.
Tearing your ass apart for the gains is worth it. Tearing your ass apart for the gains is just needed, right? It just is. It just, you know, no pain, no gain. No, I don't know, no gas.
Protein items, well, often they don't even actually have the calories or protein that they say they do. A more technical study in Nature analyzed 45 commercial high-protein sport food products in the Egyptian market, and they found that many products underreported calories, meaning the actual caloric content was higher than the label, and overreported protein content when they measured those foods in a lab. It becomes even funnier when you mention those products that I highlighted earlier. Like, does that Be Kind breakfast protein bar secretly have 240 calories and 4 grams of protein, just like a Snickers? I don't have a lab, so I guess I'll never know, but I would never buy that product to hit my protein target anyways. You also might be wondering why companies make these products in the first place. Why not just keep making the regular?
Because people are retorted. People are retorted. Doug, is that how you do your daily protein intake? No pain, no gas? True. Yep. Sorry for the random off-topic rant, but the dinner here I walk by between Friday and Sunday smells absolutely awesome. The food smells great. I might stop in soon. They're trying to lure you. It's like the fish coming to the bait
version instead of the enhanced protein one. Well, besides the fact that a good amount of consumers express a desire for these higher protein alternatives, companies can also charge a premium for their protein products. It taps into the same psychology that made low-fat and low-carb marketing so successful in past decades. Each time, companies latch onto whatever nutrient is trending and use it as a way to differentiate their products in an oversaturated market. Protein just happens to be the latest nutrient in the spotlight, so everything from chips to ice cream to pancake mix gets slapped with that label, whether or not it actually makes sense nutritionally. Alright, so the truth about those products is all taken care of. But what about the high protein meal and snack craze on social media? A lot of these reels and TikToks that I'm seeing
taste ass. All of this food tastes ass. Why would you eat that? It's just painful. It's just painful. It's just a crime committed in the kitchen. It's an atrocity committed in the kitchen. This should be jailable. This should be a jailable offense. Overestimate calories and everything because I'm terrified of eating too much. I'm allowed to eat more for the bulk.
Use high quality, reputable, high protein sources that are from whole foods that do a lot more than just aid muscle repair and growth. I will say, if you're someone who struggles hitting their daily protein target as an athlete, these kind of higher protein versions of different snacks and meals are actually really useful, especially because you know that you're actually getting the amount of protein on the labels. But this is where we have to shift our focus back to, why do these even need to exist for the average person in the first place? Why do you need to make buns out of tuna? Why do you need your muffins to have cottage cheese in the wet mix? These sorts of high protein recipes only come to fruition in a culture that glorifies protein as the holy grail of nutrition, and dare I say, people teetering on an eating disorder? Because honestly, that's what it feels like in a lot of these cases. I don't think you get to the point where you consider blending Greek yogurt or cottage cheese in every single piece of food, unless you're someone like the type of person who needs to track and measure every single one of their calories and obsesses over it like every hour of the day.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm not trying to bulk, I'm trying to lose, yeah, okay. I'm trying to bulk. I'm gonna say it, I hate bulking. I hate bulking, I hate it. Because I'm like, I don't want to eat more, but I have to eat this now. But I don't want to do it.
So with all that being said, what do we actually know about protein? How much protein do you...
Like, I find eating less easier than eating more. I hate it.
Really need? And do you ever really need to be eating these protein slop creations? Well, the answer is a bit nuanced. Protein is an essential macronutrient. That is indisputable, and adding more can help you feel fuller for longer because it's a very satiating macronutrient, meaning it can be utilized for weight loss. But eating too much or too little will damage your health, and a lot of people just eat a ton of it without even working out. There are some studies that show younger people who eat excessively high protein diets have an increased risk of all-cause mortality, aka dying. But similar studies show that trend reverses after you get to age 65 because seniors often have more of what is called anabolic resistance. So what does that mean for you? Well, if you don't do any form of resistance or endurance training regularly, which you should by the way, you only need around half a gram of protein per pound of body weight. And chances are if you live in America,
the duality of woman. In my chat, the duality of woman. Eating more is so easy though. Eating less is always easier. The duality is crazy here. I'd say it depends. I'd say it depends. I say it depends on the person. Like somebody's like really overweight, eating less is probably harder. Somebody who's like normal weight, eating more is probably easier.
You are easily hitting that protein requirement without the need for sugar, alcohol, stuffed protein bars, or cottage cheese slop recipes. If you do, however, exercise, the latest research shows that in almost all cases, you need no more than 0.7 grams per pound of body weight, or 1.6 to 1.7 grams per kilograms of body weight. I know some people mention that when you're cutting, you should increase your protein intake to compensate for the lack of carbs and calories you're getting, but personally I found that even just staying at 0.6 grams to 0.7 grams per pound of body weight, I don't see a noticeable difference if I increase that even when I'm keeping my calories low. Speaking of carbs and calories, carbs, man, carbs are extremely important for athletes and for building muscle, even though they don't get put on the same pedestal as high protein stuff, because why would we market things as high carb? Most people have associated high carb things with bad, which just goes to show how programmed the average consumer and the general population is when it comes to what is actually healthy. Anyways, when you lift weights or do any intense training, your muscles rely heavily on glycogen. That's the stored form of carbohydrates.
You need the carbs regardless. You need them. You know, can easily eat more. Just go out and get something sweet or oily, I guess. Oil up. You won't even need to eat a ton. The calories would just add up. I find eating less to be easier because I don't like making food. Plus, I like fasting, especially when I start getting faint. Okay. I love making food.
Without enough carbs, glycogen stores run low, your training performance drops, and it's really important to have carbs post-workout because you'll be ready.
Well, there's a reason why athletes eat, like endurance athletes eat so much, so many carbs. It makes sense.
To hit your next session with full energy stores. So if you want to know what you should really be placing emphasis on, it's not just eating more protein than the average sedentary person, but also more carbs. Now for the golden question. Are all of these high protein products completely useless marketing scams? Not always. While eating a protein bar is not the absolute best choice, if you have little time, you're traveling, or in some other setting where it's difficult for you to hit your protein goal for the day, picking up a protein bar is a pretty good solution. Just make sure you're reading the label so you can actually see what macros and ingredients you're consuming, and not solely rely on these products that require fortified proteins added into them. Because as we saw, they don't always have the amount of protein or calories that the label claims. A whole food, balanced diet will always be king, no matter what fake credential influencer tells you is the best macronutrient or whatever and tries to get you to just switch up your diet a million fucking times. Whole food balanced diet, it always works. And if your obsession with protein and fitness in your body is getting to a point where you can't even enjoy an ice cream or some chips and salsa with your friends unless it has like 10 grams of protein in it, I'm gonna make a generalization here and say that you're a little too hooked on protein, and that might
be a mental health issue, an obsession. Wait, is it 0.5 grams per... Oh, yes, or kilogram? That's a good question. Per pound or kilogram? I have no idea. Per kilogram? Yeah, well, then it should not be that hard. If that is only if bro is correct. If he's not correct, that's the question. Then they might cause some trouble.
Turn into some sort of mental health issues for you. Unless you're training for a competition or something, it's completely fine to sometimes consume foods that don't have the high protein standard. In fact, sometimes getting a side with like fruits or veggies is healthier than if you were to replace that with like a protein bar just because you want to get more protein in and you think your muscles are going to fucking deplete if you don't. Protein does not automatically equal health. Adequate, balanced macro and micronutrients do. Let me hear your thoughts about the protein craze in the comments below.
It's pretty much the end of the video. See, the question is this. I don't think protein is the solution, because what we're seeing is not the result of like high protein intake in general. When we're talking about people that work out, what we see is just people on gear constantly. And we're constantly being bombarded by people on gear. They're all just on gear. All of them. The celebrities, the influencers, they're all just a lot of them are just on gear. And that's the problem. So it is very simple that no matter how hard you work out, you're never gonna get to the point where these people are, right? That's just not gonna happen. Per kilogram seems wrong, because then I only need 29.45 grams of protein, and that seems too low. If your daily needs are, for example, 2,000 calories, that's between 207 calories from protein, or 50 to 175 grams. Okay, let's look at that. How much would a 70 kilogram person would, when I look that up, needs like 56 to 70 grams per day. Anyways, never use steroids. They're still gonna use steroids. All of them. Anyways, like, comment, and subscribe.